Hola, amigos and amigas. Welcome to High Vibe Knit. We are very happy to have you with us this week, as always. And Lindsay and I, we're just doing a solo ep today. We wanted to teach you guys and talk about how to master your resistance, which I know we've done at least one episode on this before in the past. So go back and see where it was so you can have even more information on this. But really, mastering your resistance is the key to like being the ultimate creator of your reality, because you can learn as much manifesting stuff as you want on the interwebs and in books and in courses and at workshops. But I feel like the missing piece is always like, how do we deal with our resistance? Because it doesn't matter like how good of a quote unquote creator you are if you have these blockages that you can't unravel or untangle, or if you're self-sabotaging what you're creating, or if you're not letting in what you've already created. And this all ties back to resistance. So if we want to break it down into like a really basic level, I'll give my definition of resistance, and then Lindsay, you can give yours. And then if you could speak on like the subconscious mind and how that plays into the manifestation process and resistance and all that. So for me, I would define resistance as any type of like split energy. So some of your energy is like supporting what you want to create or saying, this is what I want, right? But then some of your energy is moving in the opposite direction. Like, this is not what I want. This would not be good for me. I'm not ready for this. I don't want it. I don't deserve it, whatever, whatever. So basically, resistance is split energy, and it can show up in many different forms, which we'll talk about later. Lindsay, how would you describe resistance in like a basic level?
Well, I'm very basic. So sorry. I got to start with a joke. I'm so about the corny jokes. So listen, I agree with you. I definitely, I know that resistance is a push and pull. That's what the definition of resistance is, right. Like a tug of war between one way or the other. It feels very much resistant as well energetically, but resistance as a hypnotherapist really comes down to your conscious mind, where goals originate, wants this thing, knows that it would be good for your expansion, your fulfillment, your happiness, whatever the thing is. Your subconscious, which is working on most of the time outdated information, says, no, we've never done that before. You could die, so we're not going to do that.
Right.
Obviously, consciously, we know that just because we've never done it before, we're not going to necessarily die, especially if it's something nice, like a new car or a new house or living somewhere different, relationships. But depending on what's in your subconscious, if there's that resistance showing up, it is really because your subconscious is very, very afraid for your safety. The basic job of your subconscious is to keep you breathing, which is why it does our lungs for us and makes our whole systems work without us even really having to think about it. Keep you breathing, keep you alive, and keeping you safe. And that is kind of can be equated to like exactly where you are. Right now, you are 100% successful at being exactly who your subconscious wants you to be, because it is 90% of your mind, and therefore it is the final say in whatever you want to do. So resistance can show up in lots of ways, but really it comes down to that push and pull, that split energy comes down to, I want something. My subconscious doesn't want me to have it, or doesn't know that it's safe to have this. And therefore I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling like nothing's working for me, that kind of thing. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it, just in simple, like conscious versus subconscious.
Totally.
Because what I have come to understand through like just my own manifestation practices and coaching a lot of clients and stuff is that usually our resistance does live in our subconscious. We don't realize that it's there. We don't realize how it's sabotaging us. We don't realize how it's holding it back. It's in the shadow, right? It's unseen. It's in the subconscious mind. And a lot of the healing work around that is to first bring awareness to it, awareness and understanding. And then you can deal with it from there once you know like what it is. But if you don't know that it's even there, how can you untangle it? How can you work through it? How can you move past it if you're not even aware in the first place? So I would say tip number one for
Mhm.
mastering your resistance is figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And we could definitely can share some practices around how to help yourself do that for sure.
Well, and I want to give a quick reminder too. We talk about this all the time, but every part of you that causes resistance or a push and pull effect is trying to take care of you really in the best way that it knows how. The only kind of hitch in the giddy up, if you will, is that your subconscious, your worthiness, your whatever part of you is holding you back is working off of outdated information. It just is as simple as that. So if you can find a way through mindset work or you know what we're going to talk about today to allow that part of you to know that it's safe, to know that you are worthy, and to know all of these things, and to know that the information is simply outdated. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just working off an old version that isn't relevant anymore. And so in that way, you can give yourself permission to begin to let that go. We have to update our phones. We definitely should be updating what's in our subconscious and what's in our energetic beings so that we can automatically manifest what we want.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Word. I do know. And also I want to point to a past episode we did way back in the OG High Vibing days with Brad Yates. And he touched a little bit on self-sabotage. And I'll never forget what he said about how all self-sabotage is just misguided self-love.
Yes.
Which is exactly what you were explaining, which is these parts of you, something inside your subconscious is like, hey, we can't go for that. That's not safe. That's potentially dangerous. Better to just stay in the box. Better to not change anything. That's not a malicious energy. That's not something that's trying to consciously harm you or ruin your life. It actually thinks that it's truly helping you. Its way of showing you love is like being that overbearing parent or like, you know, like a helicopter mom, like your subconscious, like your helicopter mom, like watching everything you do. Like, that's not it. Don't do that. Don't put sand in your mouth. Don't go there. Watch both ways. Like, it's kind of that energy, and it just loves you a lot and wants you to live. Like, you can't blame it for that, you know?
It just wants you to live. Now, if you want to live happily or
you want to thrive,
if you want to thrive, then you absolutely have the power and decision to make to create that reality for yourself. So it's possible. Of course it's possible. Of course, people are now becoming so much more aware of their own power that they were freaking born with, that society just told them didn't exist, and there's no voice inside you, whatever. Of course there is. You were born with everything you need to make it happen. Resistance is just a way to remind you that you are being taken care of, just, you know, in a way that maybe isn't fully up to date with where you're going and what you want to do for your expansion, you know.
Because every coping mechanism has an expiration date.
That's right. And every coping mechanism had a reason to come into existence.
Yes, so a valid one.
Please know that everything that you're doing to, quote, self-sabotage was necessary at some point in your life, but it's just simply not anymore. What I also want to, can I interject a little thing about another thing that resistance can be, which is if you've started, let's say you've started affirmations or meditating every day, and you get like 5 days in and you're feeling great. You're like, yes, this is what I want to do forever. And then day 6 comes around and you're like, I never want to do this. This is so silly. Why am I doing? Nothing's working. And you start to feel that resistance. That situation sometimes can just be it's working, and your subconscious knows that it's working. And so it's kind of pulling out all the stops, and it's kind of using every tool in its toolbox to get you to stop doing it, because it is simply afraid of what would happen if you get to over that hump of resistance and start to retrain your mind. So again, coming from a place of self-love, but the resistance could really just be, hey, this is working, so don't stop. Like, keep doing it, because your subconscious knows that something's going on. If it wasn't working and if everything was the same, you would feel the same. You know what I mean? But you don't. So sometimes you can take it as a really good sign that you're on the right track, and you just have to, push through it.
Yeah. So basically your subconscious mind views anything as new as like danger.
Yeah.
Like newness equals danger. That's why we're so afraid of the unknown. That's why we're so afraid of change. That's why we get so anxious, because the subconscious mind is like, new is not familiar. And
New is
familiar is
actually,
where we want to be to stay alive.
yeah. New. Okay. So let's take two scenarios. We have something unknown that you've never experienced before that is really cool, like a raise or, the love of your life. And then on the other hand, we have a past trauma that is bad and that you've lived through it and it was not a good experience. You did not like that. To your subconscious, those two things are very much similar in terms of how afraid it is. So anything you've lived through that you don't like and anything you haven't lived through that could be great, equal amount of fear there. So anything unknown is just scary. So I like what you said about like I don't remember what you said, but you did say something that triggered this thought, something really good that triggered this thought, which is comfortable. You said comfortable, I think, or something like that. And this is kind of an extreme example, but I think, Kelsey, maybe you can relate to this. I know I can. Staying in a relationship, right, that is not good, but the fear of leaving and trying it on your own is worse than the fear of staying with the discomfort that you are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Familiar discomfort
Yes.
is a place where we can get stuck for sure.
Yes. Familiar discomfort. And it can be a relationship, it can be a money level, it can be, it can be anything. Familiar discomfort is probably where most of us are living right now in some degree or another.
Yeah, and you don't even have to shame yourself for it. Like, it's
No,
fine.
no,
It's
no.
normal. All we want you to do is consciously choose that and realize that you're doing that. If you are staying in that job or that relationship or that house or whatever it is, whatever situation that's uncomfortable, but it's familiar because you're not ready to take the next step, that's fine. That might be the most self-loving thing for you to do right now. Leap when you're ready. Or maybe it's more self-loving to challenge yourself to go now and not stay. Like, only you can decide, and it depends on the situation and the moment, right? But we're just saying this, like, if you're going to do that, realize that you're doing that, bring that into your conscious awareness and choose that. I am choosing to stay here until I'm ready to leave. And I know that's what I'm doing, and that's fine.
It's such a more empowered place to be. There's that saying of, you won't move until the discomfort of staying where you are outweighs the fear of leaping towards something that could be really great. And that is always true. And I can definitely attest to this because I think I've said this on the podcast before, but in high school, I was in this relationship that was not great. And an elder at the time, she was like someone I looked up to, said to me, "You don't have to do anything now. You don't have to do anything today or tomorrow or the next day, but just know that eventually there will be a point where the bad will outweigh the good, and you will the tipping point, and you will take that next step. You will." Mm-hmm. And I never forgot that she said that. And just by her simply saying that kind of planted a seed that I was making that decision. And when you know that you're making that decision, stuff's not just happening to you, you are an active co-creator, whether you know it or not. It kind of helped me be empowered to be like, you know what? Maybe I am a little more uncomfortable than I'd like to be. And maybe it's not so bad over here where the sun is shining and I have no idea where that road is going, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that pain threshold. Like, we really don't change until we hit our pain threshold. That's one of our biggest motivators as humans, because the subconscious thinks it's in our best interest not to change. So we don't until we're in so much pain that we're like, okay, it would actually be less painful to experience the unknown than to stay here. Anyway, that was our side tangent about that. But let's go back to the basics and give some examples of how resistance can look and show up. So I'll start with one, and then you'll think of some and give some more.
Oh, I got tons. I just don't know which one to say first.
Right. There's so many. So I'll give a personal example. Before I met Jeff, when I had just gotten out of this horrible relationship, for a long time, I didn't realize this until I noticed the resistance, that I thought, okay, I want a new relationship. Like, that's what I really want. Consciously in my mind, that was like the thing. That's all I ever wanted. I want something new. I want something better. It's going to be awesome. But a part of me was like, still kind of on this narrative of like, well, love never works out for you, or like love is dangerous, like don't put yourself in that situation again so soon. Like there were all these parts of me that were not on board with what I thought that I truly wanted. And once I just noticed that, I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to live from those stories or that place anymore. And then like a few weeks later, Jeff showed up. So I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes just
Isn't that how
looking
it
at
goes?
it. Right. It's like you look at the resistance and you understand, oh, okay, all these parts of me, they're not on board. Cool. I get it. I understand why. This makes a lot of sense. You have a little powwow with them or whatever, and then you can move on with your life. So that's like probably an example that a lot of people can relate to. But what are some other ones that you see like with clients or with yourself, like when resistance shows up?
Well, really, the biggest resistance factor that I see in my practice, no matter what anyone comes to me for or what they want to work on, worthiness comes inevitably, without even really trying, because you start to notice that whether you come to me for a personal thing or a business thing or a relationship thing or gosh, whatever, what's going on in here. And for those who are listening to the podcast, I'm pointing to myself. Okay. What's going on in your self, right? Your capital S self, will be mirrored in every aspect of your life. And sometimes this feeling of unworthiness is a mistranslation of your subconscious just isn't ready. And so when you translate it through your human filters of, well, I want this thing, but I don't have this thing, so it must mean something about me. It must mean I'm not doing something right, or I'm not worthy, or gosh, whatever. It really just is your subconscious isn't ready. So take back your power, girl. Start steering your ship in that direction. But really, I would say the biggest way that it shows up is this feeling of like, I just don't know if it's possible for me. And that's,
Mhm.
it's simple. It's a mistranslation. So I know that people can relate to this. It can show up in so many ways, like overwhelm and
Mhm.
what I mentioned earlier, like starting something and feeling so good about it, and then just feeling like you just can't anymore.
Yeah.
Stopping and starting over again is a huge sign of getting to a certain point where resistance kicks in and you don't understand what's going on. So you just like, well, I give up. But once you know that resistance can A, be a good thing, and B, be a good thing, right? Like it's just something that's trying to help you in its own way.
Well,
Then
it's really
it
just
really just,
information. And
yeah,
it's
it
like,
just
what are you
changes
going
the
to
game.
do with that information?
Yeah.
Are you going to make meanings? Are you going to make it mean bad things about yourself, like how Lindsay said? Or are you going to untangle it, get to the root of it and be like, oh, this isn't serving me anymore, or I don't want to believe that anymore, or I don't need to hold myself back because of that fear, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
from a broader, like, if we want to categorize resistance in different ways that it can look like resisting how you feel. It doesn't have to be only resisting your manifestation either. You can be in resistance
Right.
to the present moment. You can be resisting how you feel. You can be resisting other people's opinions. You can be in resistance to anything. You can be in denial.
Mm-hmm.
You can be pushing against something that's unwanted. That's a form of resisting. You can I don't know how many other ways that show up, like so many ways. It shows
Yeah.
up in your limiting beliefs. It shows up in the parts of you that don't want what you think you want. The ways that we've expressed, but also like on a more broader scale, it can show up in any area of your life as a thought or an action or
Yeah.
a habit. It's
At its
not
core,
just
it is a push against something in your belief system. And however you translate that out, whether it's a manifestation or, like you said, other people's opinions or anything like that, it always reflects your belief system.
Yeah.
Always.
Oh, and I have another personal example that I think
Tell
will be
me.
helpful. So, in my money manifestation journey, I've been manifesting more and more money, but I realize that there's like this threshold in my mind because I don't feel like I'm very organized when it comes to like my taxes and my
Yeah.
business and the back end. So, once I realized that my point of resistance was like, oh, I don't want to bring in more money because I'm not ready for it. I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to owe so much in taxes and not be organized enough to pay it and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, how to untangle this resistance is to get a tax pro and finally get organized. So I'm happy to say that today I hopped on a call with a
Yay!
lady and she's going to help me get it all figured out and support me in the money realm. And now I feel like I'm going to have so much less resistance to receiving abundance because I'll have the proper places to funnel it, you know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's an example of like identifying your resistance and then dealing with it
Clearing
in
the
this
path.
example, like a real life way to make that not a problem anymore. So now I'll be able to feel like it's more safe to receive.
Clearing the path. Exactly. I was just thinking about today, actually. Do you remember when we did, I think it might have been on the podcast or it might have just been on our own time together. We did a money session for you. And during the hypnosis, you got like money from your grandmother and you didn't notice until we got off the call and you're like, oh my gosh, while we were doing this, this came through. Do you remember this?
Oh, I vaguely remember. Yeah. My mom was like, oh, by the way, I just saw your grandma and she gave me like $200 to give to you or something like that. And that happened like literally while we were on the call.
During the session. And you got, it's just so funny. Clearing resistance in all types of ways.
Gotta love those grandmas that give you the money.
Oh my goodness.
But
So
yeah,
funny.
so basically resistance can be anything. Self-sabotage. It's basically like a push energy or like a contractive energy, like not really open to receive.
It's never an expanding. No.
Yeah. And the opposite of resistance is like acceptance. Even if you don't have to like it, and like accepting something doesn't have to mean that like you're condoning that it like stay like that forever. It just means that you accept, okay, this is what it is right now. So let's use that information of reality and go from there. Like that feels more empowering than, you know, being in denial, resisting how it is, fighting against the reality, because that's so exhausting. Like being in resistance is really tiring. Really tiring.
God, it is. It so is. It's like, and there's no real payoff to it either. You know, I always say like there's never a downside to just getting very clear on you and where stuff's coming from, like resistance or any belief that you have. Like, what is this? And how can I empower myself in this situation? You're never going to regret doing that. However, with this if you don't figure out your resistance and know it from a loving place, that's the only thing in my view that you might regret, is not knowing these things when you had the chance, or kind of be allowing yourself to be stuck in the resistance when you know it is a choice most of the time and you can be empowered. Like that's the only thing you'll regret. There's no downside to learning more about yourself or loving yourself more or understanding that every part of you is trying to love you, you know? Why do we do that? That's interesting.
Well, I think because there's a perceived downside of if I learn information that I'm not willing to act on, then I'm going to feel even less empowered, which is true. If I do sometimes you can learn deep truths about yourself, but if you're not willing to make the changes to make your life more in accordance with your personal truths, then you're going to have even more pain than you did before, because now you're aware of what you are not doing.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, if I take this leap and it doesn't work out the way I've already decided it should work out, that means I have failed. And so I should just not try.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that, because that's a big one. That's just like, I always just say, like, you're never going to regret something you've tried, but you will always regret something that you didn't try if you wanted to and you just didn't. So, I mean, what if you fail? Sure, whatever. But what if you don't? Like, what if you exceed beyond your wildest dreams? It just works out in a slightly different way than you thought it would. Like, that's beautiful to me. Like, you know who was on the podcast that was like, I said this before. I always reference this because I always think about it now. Who was it? Jenna? She goes, I just wake up every day and I say, universe, show me how you're going to surprise me today. Delight me and surprise me. And I just think that's such a wonderful place to be in, especially when you're in resistance. Like, what if you just said that to yourself when you felt really stressed out? Give some of it away. You don't have to carry it all. Like, give some of it to the universe, give some of it to the divine, God, whatever you believe in, and lighten your load a little bit, you know?
The good old worry doll trick.
Did I just change subjects? Like, I do that all the time, but I think it's all important. I do.
That's okay. I'll get us back on track. So back to resistance. We gave some examples of how it can show up. So now let's share with the peeps, some of our
Just one
best,
peep.
just one peep, whoever you are out there. It's you, whoever's listening, you're the peep. Okay,
Oh, good.
for the peeps out there, what
We're
I was
goofy.
trying to say is, how do they identify and find and extract this resistance from their being? So I know what works really well for me and my clients, and something that I write about in some of my upcoming books, like Letters to the Universe and stuff, is like, just by asking yourself the question, is there any part of me that's not on board with what
Yeah.
I'm wanting here? And then you just sit and listen to all the objections that come up in your mind. You'll be like, whoa, I did not know
Yeah.
that was all there, but good to know.
Yeah. Or even, playing devil's advocate, so to speak. Sometimes I'll have my clients, and this honestly doesn't happen that often. But when it does, I give them, a homework assignment to kind of journal and just write down every reason that getting what they want might be a bad idea.
Yes, that's what I was going to say next. That's so good to do.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to see all sides, right? And sometimes when you're feeling that resistance, some of the worst aspects of resistance is just not knowing where it's coming from and not knowing what to do about it. So that's a really good, easy way. And there's no wrong answer. So write down everything that comes out, and just know that it doesn't have to make sense to you. Just get it out. Just get it out there.
Yeah, those are some great ways to tap into your resistance. Or you can use card decks too. Like, you can ask your deck, like, to show you like where maybe you're self-sabotaging, or what some of your blocks are, or how you're resisting something, and you might get some insight that way. You can like meditate and contemplate about it and just receive downloads once you ask the question, like, how am I resisting? Show me how I'm resisting. And just honestly, like, being brutally honest with yourself
Yeah.
can
Oh
go a
gosh.
long way in the shadow work process, because really bringing these things into the light, it's like the definition of shadow work, like handling and dealing with your resistance. That's when people say that, this is like a big part of it. So asking yourself some of those questions, getting curious, being open to what you receive is really super helpful. And if you can't see into your blind spots, which everyone has blind spots that they can't see into, that's why there's people like Lindsay and I who can point them out to you.
This is
Like,
literally why we were put on
yeah,
earth.
as soon as somebody says, oh, I want to manifest this, but blah, 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 I'm like, oh, here's your
Yeah.
resistance. Okay, let's deal with that. And boom, it'll happen. So same thing with Lindsay. She'll be like guiding you into your own internal journey, so you can see what any blockages or stuck points are. And from there, you can untangle them. So ask for help, have a coach, hire someone, hire a tax person if your resistance is with taxes. I mean, get support, resource yourself. There's nothing wrong with that.
You don't have to carry it all. You shouldn't,
Yeah,
nobody should carry it
that's
all.
not fun. No.
I feel like there was something so good I was going to say, and I don't remember what it was.
That's okay. It'll come back to you right when I'm in the middle of a sentence.
Right. It will. Yep. That's what happens.
So people have an idea of how to identify their resistance. Probably at this point, if you've been listening up until this point, you're thinking, oh yeah, I've done that. Or I know how I have resistance in this area now. Or, oh, that makes so much sense. Or I always self-sabotage like this, or whatever. So once people know their resistance, how do they untangle that or make it so it's not a problem anymore?
Move through the resistance?
Yes.
Or work with the resistance? Or
anything to do to make it not a problem anymore. There's a million different ways, so this is like a trick question, but we're going to try and dive into some ways of how to untangle.
So I love a good like quote. It never gets easier, you just get better. And one of the things, resistance is always going to come up. If your goal is to be a millionaire and you become a millionaire and there's resistance along the way, but you do it, there's always a goal after that. Let's have 2 million. Okay. Resistance again, your resistance threshold, I guess, may grow and go outward, expand a little bit, get higher, but there's always going to be resistance. So just know that you're always going to come up against it. It is a natural process of expansion.
Yeah. It's the contracting before the expanding.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. It would be no fun.
Well, it would
Although
be,
contraction is
that would
not
be
fun
like a
either.
roller coaster that goes straight really
Mm-hmm.
slowly instead of one that goes
Real
up and
slow.
down and upside down really fast.
Yeah. 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 So when you notice it, just like we said before, the first thing to do is start asking yourself some damn questions. Where's this coming from? How is this trying to serve me? How is it trying to serve me? What happens if I don't get this? Why might it be a good thing for me not to get this? Of course, I use the term good loosely because we know consciously that it's a very good thing to have your goal, but there's a reason why it feels scary. So what are those reasons? Just really get in touch and in tune with where it started. In hypnosis, I do this a lot. It's like a block discovery journey where we literally go in and have a conversation with whatever's blocking you, with the resistance, and we create an image for what it is. The client will, and they'll just talk to it. Okay, what do you need? What is your biggest priority? What matters to you? Block, resistance. And then you switch places with it. It's so much fun. Every single time the client's like, I have so much more information. It's like so much fun, but you can really kind of do this on your own if you journal or if you kind of meditate on it. But you switch places with the block and then get its perspective, get inside its energy, and really understand. Almost every time, I would say 99% of the time, the client will recognize that this is something that is trying to help them, just misguided. And that's all we're trying to say. So how is it trying to help me? How has it served me in the past? Maybe any question that kind of comes to you, just have a conversation with yourself, because it's really what you're talking to is the resistance.
Yeah, I like to do that too in my coaching work, except I'll like, instead of calling it like the resistance itself, we'll deal
Right.
with like the part that's in resistance. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I want you to, like an acting exercise, like I want you to embody this part of you that is traumatized by love
Uh-huh.
and thinks it would be a bad idea. And then I'll go in and interview her while the client's in character and be like, so tell me about your love life.
Oh
Like, how
yeah.
are you feeling? And she'll be like, dude, it was the worst thing ever. We're never doing that again. I'm trying to protect so-and-so, the person, the host person,
Yeah.
I'll call
Yeah.
it. I'm trying to protect them from making the same mistake again. That was the worst thing we could have ever done. Love is not safe, blah, blah, blah. And like this part will be like on one, right? And then the person comes out of like the trance or the acting or whatever you want to call it, the channeling, and they're like, well, damn, I didn't know I really felt like that. But then once you know, you can be like, okay, I see why that developed. Like how you're saying,
Yeah.
when you understand it and have compassion for it, you like naturally dissolve the resistance because you replace
Exactly.
the resistance with love. You have love
Yep.
for this part of you, you have appreciation for this part of you. And yeah, like doing that makes you realize, oh, I don't need that part to protect me. I can protect myself. And then you go back to the
Exactly.
part and be like, hey, I get that you're nervous about this. Like, I really appreciate you for caring so much, but like things are going to be different this time. I got this. I'm going to take it slow. Like, we're safe. And you just kind of have to deal with these parts of you and these blockages like little kids who just don't know.
Because they kind of are,
Yeah,
you know.
like they literally are.
I tell people, I tell my clients, the first thing that they learn is that your subconscious is formed around 9, 10, sometimes 8. Okay. So between like 8 and 10 is when your subconscious is solidified, and whatever's in there kind of makes you who you are. Before that, your mind is just open and you're kind of just accepting everything. That's why we say kids are sponges. So when you're talking to yourself, and you're feeling these certain types of ways, that is that 9-year-old kid who's just trying to figure it out and just trying to live life. So when you're having these like nasty conversations with yourself, I'm going to use self-talk as a very specific example, because so many people have no idea how important their self-talk is. But now that I've said it, it's in there and you're going to start thinking about it. I know you will. I trust you. But when you start to notice the kinds of things that you're saying to yourself, it's either feeding the resistance or allowing you to expand. So I don't want to give examples because I have a hard time even pretending to be bad to myself. And here's why: because your subconscious has no idea if you're joking or serious. It doesn't understand fact from fiction. So if I pretend and give you examples, like I just don't cancel. I don't want to do any of that. But you know what I'm talking about.
Cancel.
Things that you say
Yeah.
to yourself that are out of line with who you want to be and where you're going in life. So what would you like to believe instead in those moments? Feed that inner child encouragement. Feed it allowing, feed it trust, feed it, nurturing, and you will see a difference.
Hey there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really
Yeah.
cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibin' It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.